My name is Delilah, a 26-year-old freelance photographer from Millbrook Heights. Growing up, family gatherings were the highlight of my year, especially celebrating my older brother Zachary's achievements. While he climbed the corporate ladder at prestigious investment firms, I built my career capturing life's beautiful moments through my camera lens, despite my family's constant doubts about my hobby. I never imagined that at his biggest celebration yet, his promotion to senior vice president at Hartwell Associates, my own brother would publicly humiliate me in front of 150 of the city's most influential people, calling me an uneducated failure who had wasted her potential. But that devastating night didn't just shatter my heart, it changed the entire trajectory of my life in ways I never could have predicted. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Before I tell you how my family's cruel words at that party became the catalyst for the most incredible transformation of my life, and how I went from being the family disappointment to building something they never saw coming, let me know in the comments what city you're watching from, and please subscribe if you've ever felt like the black sheep in your own family. Your support means everything to creators like me who understand what it's like to have your dreams dismissed by the people who should believe in you most. Growing up in the affluent suburb of Millbrook Heights meant living in a world where success had very specific definitions. My father, Dr. Harrison Blackthorne, spent his days as the head of neurosurgery at Millbrook General Hospital, regularly featured in medical journals and local news for his groundbreaking procedures. Every dinner conversation revolved around his latest surgical triumph or research publication. My mother, Professor Arabella Blackthorne, held the distinguished chair of economics at Millbrook University, where her expertise in international markets made her a sought-after consultant for major corporations and government agencies. Their home office walls were covered with degrees from Harvard, Yale, and Oxford, a constant reminder of the academic excellence that defined our family's identity. Then there was Zachary, my brother, for years my senior and the absolute golden child of the Blackthorne legacy. From elementary school through his MBA from Wharton, Zachary never brought home anything less than perfect grades. He was class president, star of the debate team, captain of the tennis squad, and eventually graduated as valedictorian from both his undergraduate program at Princeton and business school. When Zachary's college acceptance letters arrived from every Ivy League school in the country, our parents threw a celebration dinner that lasted 3 hours, with phone calls to relatives and family friends announcing each acceptance. The pride radiating from my parents was so intense I sometimes wondered how they contained it. Zachary chose Princeton for undergraduate studies, then Wharton for his MBA, each decision celebrated like a national holiday in our household. I genuinely loved Zachary during our childhood years. Before academic pressure consumed every aspect of his personality, we were incredibly close. He taught me to ride my first bicycle, helped me build elaborate tree houses in our backyard, and even defended me when neighborhood kids made fun of my thick glasses and messy braided hair. For years, he was my protector, my confidant, and my biggest supporter. We had secret handshakes, shared midnight snacks when our parents weren't looking, and he always made sure I was included in games with his older friends. But something fundamental shifted during his high school years. Each academic achievement, every award ceremony, and all the constant praise from teachers and parents created an invisible wall between us. The brother who once encouraged my wild imagination and creative projects gradually became someone who saw my artistic pursuits as childish distractions from real accomplishments. By the time he left for Princeton, our conversations had become stilted and formal, focused entirely on his achievements while my interests were politely dismissed. Meanwhile, I struggled tremendously with traditional academic expectations from the very beginning. My third-grade teacher scheduled multiple parent conferences because I constantly drew elaborate fantasy scenes in the margins of my math worksheets instead of solving equations. In middle school, my report cards consistently noted that while I was highly creative and imaginative, I was also easily distracted and unable to focus on structured assignments. High school became a daily battle between my natural artistic inclinations and the rigid academic system my family revered. While I could write passionate, creative essays that earned praise from English teachers and create stunning visual presentations that amazed my art instructors, standardized tests felt like torture. Mathematical formulas looked like hieroglyphics to me, historical dates refused to stick in my memory no matter how hard I studied, and science labs left me feeling completely overwhelmed and confused. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. During this same period, my photography skills were flourishing in ways that amazed even me. I won 3 consecutive regional photography competitions, had my work featured in the Millbrook Heights Cultural Center's youth exhibition, and even received personal mentorship offers from professional photographers who saw my portfolio at local art shows. But at our dinner table, these accomplishments were acknowledged with brief, polite comments before conversation inevitably returned to Zachary's latest academic triumph, my father's surgical innovations, or my mother's research publications. The tension in our household reached its breaking point during my senior year when college applications dominated every family discussion. I desperately wanted to attend the prestigious Riverside Institute of Visual Arts, a specialized photography and digital media school where I could develop my natural talents into a legitimate career. My parents, however, insisted I apply only to traditional 4-year universities where I could pursue a practical degree in business or communications, with perhaps a minor in art if I maintained perfect grades throughout college. The arguments became increasingly heated and painful. My father eventually declared that he absolutely refused to waste his hard-earned money on what he called expensive hobby classes that would never pay the bills. I countered that I wouldn't waste 4 years of my life studying subjects that would never serve my actual career goals or utilize my natural abilities. My mother attempted to play mediator, suggesting compromises that ultimately favored my father's position. The final blow came when Zachary, home for winter break during his senior year at Princeton, pulled me aside during one particularly bitter family argument about my future. I thought my brother might finally offer the support and understanding I desperately needed. Instead, Zachary looked at me with the same dismissive expression I'd seen on our parents' faces and said, "Delilah, you need to stop being so stubborn and just get a real degree. Photography isn't a career, it's something people do on weekends. You're embarrassing the family with this fantasy." That moment shattered something fundamental inside me. The brother who had once built blanket forts with me and encouraged my creativity now saw my passion as nothing more than embarrassing delusion. It was the first time I truly understood that in the Blackthorne family, there was only one acceptable definition of success, and I would never fit that mold. Our family's social circle reinforced these rigid expectations at every turn. The Blackthornes moved in elite circles throughout Millbrook Heights, attending charity galas where my father's medical colleagues discussed their latest research grants, dinner parties where my mother's university peers debated economic policy, and country club events where successful families showcased their children's achievements like trophies. At these gatherings, I watched the same pattern repeat endlessly. Parents would beam with pride while announcing their children's acceptance to prestigious universities, internships at major corporations, or early admission to law and medical schools. The conversations followed predictable scripts: "Our son just made partner at his law firm," or "Our daughter is completing her residency at Johns Hopkins," or "We're so proud, he's been promoted to senior analyst at Goldman Sachs." When it was our family's turn to share updates, my parents' voices would swell with unmistakable pride as they described Zachary's latest academic triumph or professional milestone. Then, inevitably, someone would politely ask about me. The shift in my parents' demeanor was immediate and painful to witness. Their enthusiasm would deflate slightly as they offered vague responses like, "Oh, Delilah is still exploring her artistic interests," or "She's taking some time to figure out her direction." These social dynamics created an unspoken hierarchy within our community where careers were ranked by prestige, income potential, and social status. Doctors, lawyers, investment bankers, and university professors occupied the top tier. Traditional business professionals, engineers, and government officials filled the respectable middle ground. Everything else, especially creative pursuits, was viewed as either temporary phases young people went through before finding real careers, or unfortunate failures to launch into proper adult responsibility. The Riverside Country Club, where our family maintained membership for over 2 decades, served as the unofficial headquarters for these social expectations. During the weekly tennis matches my mother religiously attended, conversations invariably turned to comparing children's achievements. Mrs. Pemberton would gush about her son's promotion to chief financial officer, while Mrs. Ashworth detailed her daughter's acceptance to Harvard Medical School. My mother learned to strategically steer these conversations towards safer topics, avoiding direct questions about my post-graduation plans. Even our extended family reinforced these same values during holiday gatherings and special occasions. My Uncle Richard, a federal judge, would regale us with stories from his courtroom while subtly inquiring about my career plans. My Aunt Constance, a renowned psychiatrist, offered unsolicited advice about the importance of practical education and financial security whenever she visited. My grandparents, both retired professors themselves, made well-intentioned but painful comments about hoping I would eventually find my way back to serious academic pursuits. The Blackthorne household itself reflected these priorities in every detail. My father's medical awards and diplomas dominated the main hallway, while my mother's academic honors and published articles filled the living room bookshelves. Zachary's achievements, from elementary school honor roll certificates to his framed MBA diploma, occupied an entire wall in the family room that my mother lovingly called the Success Gallery. My photography work, by contrast, was relegated to my bedroom walls or occasionally displayed in less prominent areas of the house when relatives visited. My regional competition awards were stored in a box in my closet rather than showcased alongside the family's legitimate accomplishments. When I suggested hanging some of my best pieces in common areas, my mother would diplomatically explain that they needed to maintain a professional atmosphere for my father's medical colleagues who frequently visited for dinner parties and business discussions. The daily rhythms of our household revolved around academic and professional achievement. Breakfast conversations focused on my father's surgical schedule and my mother's research deadlines. Dinner discussions analyzed stock market trends, medical breakthroughs, and university politics. Weekend activities often involved networking events, professional conferences, or social gatherings with other elite families from Millbrook Heights. In this environment, my photography equipment felt increasingly out of place. My cameras, lighting gear, and editing software occupied a corner of the basement family room, tucked away like embarrassing secrets. When my father's medical colleagues visited, my mother would casually suggest I tidy up my hobby supplies before guests arrived. The message was clear: my passion was something to be minimized and hidden, not celebrated or discussed. The contrast became even more stark when Zachary graduated from Wharton and landed his first position as a junior analyst at Hartwell Associates, one of Millbrook Heights' most prestigious investment firms. The celebration dinner lasted 4 hours, with champagne toasts, calls to relatives, and detailed discussions about his career trajectory toward partnership. My parents' pride was absolutely radiant. Their son had achieved everything they had dreamed of and more. Meanwhile, I was quietly building a small portfolio of freelance photography work, shooting local weddings, family portraits, and small business promotional materials. These projects brought me genuine joy and slowly growing confidence in my abilities, but they existed in a completely separate world from my family's definition of success and achievement. The breaking point came 6 months after my high school graduation when I made the decision that would define the next chapter of my life. While my former classmates were settling into dormitories at prestigious universities, attending freshman orientations, and beginning their traditional academic journeys, I chose a completely different path that sent shockwaves through the Blackthorne household. Instead of enrolling in college, I took a position at Riverside Cafe, a bustling coffee shop in downtown Millbrook Heights that catered to young professionals and university students. The job paid $12 an hour, barely enough to cover basic expenses, but it offered flexible scheduling that allowed me to pursue photography opportunities during evenings and weekends. I moved into a tiny studio apartment above the cafe, sharing the building with 3 other young artists who were also following unconventional paths. My parents' reaction was immediate and devastating. My father declared it the most irresponsible decision I had ever made, while my mother worried aloud about what she would tell her university colleagues when they asked about my future plans. Zachary, who had just completed his first successful year at Hartwell Associates, called my choice financial suicide and predicted I would be begging to return to college within 6 months. The early months were admittedly brutal. I worked 40-hour weeks at the cafe, serving demanding customers who treated me with the casual dismissal reserved for service workers. My hands were constantly stained with coffee and my feet ached from standing on concrete floors all day. After my shifts, I would climb the narrow stairs to my cramped apartment, exhausted but determined to spend my remaining energy building my photography business. My living space consisted of a single room with a fold-out couch, a tiny kitchenette, and a corner I had converted into a makeshift photography studio. I hung blackout curtains to control lighting, invested in basic professional equipment using my meager savings, and taught myself advanced photography techniques through online tutorials and library books. My meals consisted primarily of ramen noodles, peanut butter sandwiches, and whatever leftover pastries the cafe allowed employees to take home. During this period, family gatherings became increasingly uncomfortable and infrequent. When I did attend holiday dinners or birthday celebrations, I endured a barrage of pointed questions about my temporary situation and when I planned to get serious about my future. My answers about building a freelance photography business were met with barely concealed skepticism and immediate subject changes back to Zachary's rising success at the investment firm. My uncle Richard would shake his head sadly and comment, "Such a waste of potential," while my Aunt Constance offered unsolicited advice about community college programs that might help me get back on track. My grandparents, clearly disappointed but trying to remain supportive, would slip me $20 bills and whisper hopes that I would come to my senses soon. The isolation extended beyond family relationships. My high school friends, busy with college experiences, gradually stopped including me in their social activities. When they returned to Millbrook Heights during breaks, our conversations felt strained and awkward. They discussed dorm life, interesting professors, and campus activities while I shared stories about difficult cafe customers and small photography projects. The divide between our experiences grew wider with each passing month. Despite these challenges, I began securing small photography assignments that filled me with genuine excitement and purpose. I photographed local high school senior portraits, captured family reunion gatherings, and documented small business events around Millbrook Heights. Each project taught me valuable skills about lighting, composition, and client management. More importantly, these assignments reminded me why I had chosen this difficult path in the first place. My breakthrough came through an unexpected connection at the cafe. Dr. Jennifer Hawthorne, a psychology professor at Millbrook University, became a regular customer who always ordered the same lavender latte and spent hours grading papers at a corner table. We struck up conversations during slower afternoon periods, and she mentioned needing professional headshots for her faculty profile and upcoming book publication. The headshot session went exceptionally well. Dr. Hawthorne was delighted with the results and recommended my services to several colleagues in the university's psychology department. Within 3 months, I had photographed headshots for 12 professors, earning more money than I typically made in 6 weeks at the cafe. More importantly, these professional clients treated me with respect and spoke enthusiastically about my work to their networks. Word of mouth began spreading throughout Millbrook University's faculty community. I photographed retirement parties for longtime professors, captured formal portraits for department websites, and documented academic conferences and symposiums. My client base expanded to include university administrators, guest lecturers, and graduate students defending their dissertations. Each successful project built my confidence and technical skills while expanding my professional network beyond the coffee shop environment. I invested earnings back into better equipment, upgraded my cramped studio space, and even hired a part-time assistant to help with administrative tasks and basic editing work. However, my family remained completely oblivious to these growing achievements. During the rare occasions when I shared news about landing significant clients or receiving positive feedback from university professionals, my parents responded with polite but disinterested nods before quickly pivoting conversations back to Zachary's latest promotion prospects or my father's research publications. The disconnect became painfully obvious during family social events. While other parents proudly discussed their children's college majors, internship opportunities, and career prospects, my parents would vaguely mention that I was still finding my direction or exploring creative interests. The subtext was clear: until I pursued traditional education and conventional career paths, my actual accomplishments would remain invisible and invalid in their worldview. This dismissive attitude from my own family became increasingly difficult to bear as my photography business continued growing and evolving. I had found genuine purpose and meaning in my work, was building financial independence through my own efforts, and was developing professional relationships with respected members of the community. Yet in my family's eyes, I remained the disappointing daughter who had chosen an irresponsible path and wasted her potential. The defining moment came during my second year of building my photography business, when I made a decision that would forever alter my relationship with the Blackthorn family and force me to confront the painful reality of their expectations. I had reached a crossroads where I could no longer straddle the line between seeking their approval and following my authentic path. The catalyst was an opportunity that represented everything I had been working toward. Amanda Richardson, the director of Millbrook Heights Cultural Arts Foundation, approached me with a proposal that would elevate my photography career to an entirely new level. The foundation was launching a major initiative called Faces of Millbrook, a year-long project documenting the diverse stories and experiences of community members from all walks of life. Amanda had seen my university faculty portraits and was impressed by my ability to capture not just physical appearance, but the essence and personality of my subjects. She offered me the position of lead photographer for the project, which would involve creating intimate portraits and conducting brief interviews with over 100 community members, from prominent business leaders to local artists, from longtime residents to recent immigrants building new lives in our city. The project came with a substantial fee that would allow me to quit my cafe job entirely and focus exclusively on professional photography. More importantly, it included a solo exhibition at the Cultural Arts Foundation Gallery, where my work would be displayed for 3 months and featured in a professionally published coffee table book. The exhibition opening would be attended by the city's cultural elite, including museum directors, gallery owners, and influential collectors who could potentially launch my career to regional or even national prominence. When I shared this incredible opportunity with my family during our monthly dinner at the country club, their reaction was not what I had hoped for. My father listened politely but seemed distracted by his phone, occasionally checking messages from the hospital. My mother asked a few surface-level questions about the timeline and logistics, but I could sense her underlying skepticism about the project's legitimacy and importance. Zachary's response was particularly crushing. He had just been promoted to senior associate at Hartwell Associates and was clearly riding high on his own professional success. When I finished explaining the Faces of Millbrook project, he leaned back in his chair and said, "That sounds nice, Delilah, but when are you going to start thinking about building real financial security? This photography thing is fine as a hobby, but you're 24 years old. Don't you think it's time to consider a stable career with benefits and retirement planning?" His words hit me like a physical blow. Here I was, sharing news about the most significant professional opportunity of my life, and my own brother was still dismissing my chosen career as a temporary hobby. The project represented validation from respected cultural institutions, substantial financial compensation, and potential pathways to even greater opportunities, yet my family remained blind to its significance. That night, lying in my small apartment above the cafe, I made a decision that felt both terrifying and liberating. I would accept the Faces of Millbrook project and pursue my photography career with complete dedication, regardless of my family's approval or understanding. More importantly, I would stop seeking their validation for choices that brought me genuine fulfillment and professional growth. The decision meant burning bridges I had been desperately trying to preserve. I knew that fully committing to this path would likely deepen the rift with my parents and further alienate me from the social circles they valued. But I also realized that continuing to seek approval for something they would never understand was slowly destroying my confidence and limiting my potential. I called Amanda Richardson the next morning and accepted the position with enthusiasm and gratitude. Within 2 weeks, I had given notice at Riverside Cafe, where my manager wished me well and several regular customers expressed genuine excitement about my new opportunity. The contrast between their supportive reactions and my family's indifference was stark and telling. Preparing for the Faces of Millbrook project required significant investment in upgraded equipment and expanded studio space. I used my savings to purchase professional lighting systems, high-end camera bodies and lenses, and premium printing equipment that would allow me to produce gallery-quality prints. I also rented a proper studio space in the downtown arts district, leaving behind my cramped apartment setup for a professional environment that would impress clients and subjects. The financial risk was substantial. I was investing nearly everything I had earned over the past 2 years into equipment and space, betting my future on the success of this single project. If the exhibition failed to generate additional opportunities or if my work didn't meet professional standards, I would be left with expensive equipment and no steady income to support myself. My family's reaction to these investments was predictably negative. When my mother learned I had quit my cafe job to focus entirely on photography, She called it reckless and suggested I at least maintain part-time employment for practical security. My father questioned the wisdom of spending substantial money on equipment for what he still considered an unproven venture. Zachary offered to help me find entry-level positions at respectable companies, where I could start building a real career. Their persistent inability to see photography as a legitimate profession, despite mounting evidence of my growing success and recognition, forced me to confront a painful truth. No amount of achievement in my chosen field would ever earn their respect or approval. They had decided that my path was inherently invalid, and no evidence to the contrary would change their fundamental judgment. This realization was simultaneously heartbreaking and liberating. Heartbreaking because it meant accepting that the family whose approval I had desperately sought would never celebrate my genuine accomplishments. Liberating because it freed me from the exhausting effort of trying to translate my success into terms they might understand or value. The Faces of Millbrook project began in earnest 3 months before Zachary's promotion celebration at Hartwell Associates. As I photographed community members from diverse backgrounds and listened to their stories, I found myself documenting not just their faces, but their dreams, struggles, and triumphs. The project reminded me daily that there were many different ways to build meaningful lives and successful careers, most of which existed far outside the narrow definitions my family had always insisted upon. Working with subjects who had taken unconventional paths to find fulfillment and purpose reinforced my conviction that choosing authenticity over approval had been the right decision, regardless of its personal cost. The invitation to Zachary's promotion celebration arrived on elegant cream-colored cardstock with gold-embossed lettering, announcing his elevation to Senior Vice President at Hartwell Associates. The formal language emphasized that this made him the youngest person in the firm's 60-year history to achieve such a prestigious position. My mother called within hours of the invitation's arrival, her voice brimming with excitement as she described the elaborate party being planned at the Millbrook Heights Grand Ballroom. "This will be the social event of the season," she gushed over the phone. Over 150 guests, including the city's most prominent business leaders, all the partners from Hartwell Associates, and several clients from Fortune 500 companies. The mayor will even be attending to present Zachary with a special recognition from the city council. As she spoke, I felt a familiar mixture of genuine happiness for my brother's achievement and deep sadness about my own invisibility within our family narrative. Despite the growing success of my photography business and the upcoming Faces of Millbrook exhibition, I knew this celebration would follow the same pattern as every other family milestone. My presence would be tolerated but my accomplishments would remain unacknowledged. My mother continued with detailed descriptions of the evening's plans, mentioning that several family friends and relatives would be traveling from other cities specifically for Zachary's celebration. She emphasized multiple times that this was a black tie affair and suggested I invest in something truly elegant for such an important occasion. The subtle implication was clear: my usual artistic style of dressing would not be appropriate for this level of social prominence. Despite my growing independence and emotional distance from family expectations, I found myself caring deeply about making a good impression at this event. Perhaps it was hope that my professional growth over the past 2 years might finally earn some recognition, or maybe it was simply the persistent desire to belong within my own family's world. Whatever the motivation, I decided to approach this celebration with the same level of preparation and investment that I brought to my most important photography projects. I spent considerable time and money selecting the perfect outfit for the evening. After visiting several high-end boutiques in downtown Millbrook Heights, I chose an elegant emerald green silk dress that struck the right balance between sophisticated and artistic. The dress cost more than I typically spent on clothing in an entire year, but I rationalized the expense as an investment in potentially improving family relationships and demonstrating my own professional success. The search for appropriate accessories required additional shopping trips to jewelry stores and luxury department stores where I felt somewhat out of place among the wealthy clientele. I selected understated gold jewelry and classic black heels that would complement the dress while meeting my mother's expectations for formal appropriateness. The total cost of my outfit approached what I normally earn from several photography sessions, representing a significant financial sacrifice for someone still building a freelance business. More importantly than the external preparations, I spent considerable emotional energy preparing for the social dynamics I would encounter at the party. I practiced conversations in my mirror, rehearsing how I would describe my photography work to Zachary's colleagues and family friends. I memorized impressive details about my recent projects, including the prestigious Faces of Millbrook Commission and the upcoming gallery exhibition that would showcase my work to the city's cultural elite. I also prepared responses to the inevitable questions about my education and career plans that always arose at family social events. Rather than becoming defensive or apologetic about my unconventional path, I decided to present my achievements with confidence and pride. I would describe my growing client base, my recognition within the university community, and my upcoming exhibition as evidence of legitimate professional success rather than mere hobby pursuits. The week before the celebration, I made a decision that felt both generous and strategic. I wanted to create a meaningful gift for Zachary that would demonstrate both my artistic skills and my genuine affection for him despite our complicated relationship. Using some of my favorite childhood photographs of us together, I designed and created a custom photo collage that told the story of our relationship from early childhood through his recent professional achievements. The piece required hours of careful digital editing and artistic composition, incorporating family photos with modern design elements that reflected both his business success and my creative abilities. I had the final piece professionally printed and framed with museum-quality materials, creating a gift that was both personal and impressive enough to display in his corporate office or elegant home. I hoped this thoughtful present would serve multiple purposes, demonstrating my professional capabilities to anyone who saw it, showing Zachary that I valued our relationship despite our differences, and potentially opening conversations about my own artistic achievements with party guests who might appreciate the skill and creativity involved in its creation. As the day of the celebration approached, I found myself experiencing a complex mixture of anticipation and anxiety. Part of me genuinely excited about celebrating Zachary's remarkable achievement and spending time with extended family members I hadn't seen in months. His promotion truly was impressive, representing years of hard work and dedication that deserved recognition and celebration. However, another part of me dreaded the familiar social dynamics that typically characterize these family gatherings. I anticipated the polite but dismissive responses to any mention of my photography work, the well-meaning but patronizing questions about when I would pursue real education, and the general atmosphere of being treated as the family member who had failed to launch into proper adult success. The internal conflict was exhausting. I wanted to support my brother while also hoping for some acknowledgement of my own growing accomplishments. I wanted to enjoy the elegant celebration while knowing that my professional achievements would likely be ignored or minimized. I wanted to feel like a valued family member while recognizing that my chosen path had essentially made me an outsider within my own family's social world. On the morning of the party, I woke up with nervous energy and spent extra time preparing my appearance and rehearsing my planned conversations. I reminded myself that regardless of how the evening unfolded, I had built something meaningful and successful through my own efforts. The upcoming Faces of Millbrook exhibition would showcase my work to hundreds of influential community members, representing validation that existed entirely outside my family's approval or recognition. Yet despite this growing professional confidence, I couldn't shake the hope that perhaps this celebration would finally be the moment when my family recognized my achievements and welcomed me back into their definition of success. The Millbrook Heights Grand Ballroom had been transformed into a stunning showcase of elegance and success. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over tables draped in crisp white linens, each adorned with elaborate floral centerpieces featuring white roses and gold accents. The room buzzed with the sophisticated chatter of Millbrook's elite, investment bankers, corporate executives, prominent attorneys, and local political figures, all dressed in their finest formal attire. I arrived fashionably on time, my emerald silk dress catching the light as I entered the ballroom. For a brief moment, I felt genuinely confident and appropriately dressed for this level of social occasion. The gift I had created for Zachary was carefully wrapped and tucked under my arm, and I had rehearsed my talking points about my photography business until they felt natural and impressive. The initial hour of the party unfolded exactly as I had hoped. Zachary looked genuinely pleased to see me and seemed touched when I congratulated him on his historic promotion. My parents appeared proud to have both their children present for such an important milestone, and several family friends made polite conversation about my photography work without the usual dismissive undertones I had come to expect. I found myself engaged in pleasant conversations with several of Zachary's colleagues who showed genuine interest when I mentioned my upcoming exhibition at the Cultural Arts Foundation. One senior partner at Hartwell Associates even mentioned that his wife was on the foundation's board of directors and had heard positive things about the Faces of Millbrook project. For the first time in years, I felt like my professional accomplishments were being acknowledged and respected within my family's social circle. The evening's formal program began with speeches from Hartwell and Associates managing partners, who praised Zachary's analytical skills, client relationships, and leadership potential. The mayor presented him with a special recognition from the city council, commending his contributions to Millbrook Heights business community. My parents beamed with unmistakable pride as speaker after speaker highlighted their son's exceptional achievements. When it came time for family toasts, my father delivered a heartfelt speech about watching Zachary grow from an ambitious student into a successful professional who embodied the values of hard work, education, and excellence that defined the Blackthorne family legacy. The applause was thunderous, and I found myself genuinely moved by the love and pride evident in every word. Then Zachary took the microphone to deliver his own remarks, thanking his colleagues, mentors, and family for their support throughout his career journey. His speech was polished and professional, touching on his gratitude for the opportunities he had received and his excitement about future challenges at the firm. The audience hung on every word, clearly impressed by his poise and articulation. But then something shifted in his tone as he transitioned to talking about family values and personal inspiration. "I've always been motivated by the importance of education and professional achievement," he said, his voice carrying clearly throughout the ballroom. "My parents taught me that success comes from dedication to excellence and making choices that build long-term security and respect." I felt a subtle chill as his gaze briefly landed on me, though his expression remained pleasant and composed. "I believe it's crucial to pursue paths that contribute meaningfully to society and provide stable foundations for the future," he continued. "Not everyone in our generation understands the importance of these values, unfortunately." The audience murmured agreement, and I noticed several people nodding approvingly at his words. My stomach began to tighten with an inexplicable sense of dread, though I couldn't yet pinpoint why his seemingly innocuous comments were making me feel increasingly uncomfortable. Zachary's speech then took a more personal turn as he began discussing family dynamics and the different paths that siblings sometimes choose. "My sister Delilah is here tonight," he said, gesturing in my direction with what appeared to be a warm smile. "And while we've chosen very different approaches to our careers, I think our family's experience illustrates some important lessons about the choices young people make." The room's attention turned toward me, and I felt dozens of eyes examining my appearance and demeanor. I managed a smile and a small wave, though my heart was beginning to race with growing anxiety about where this public acknowledgement might be heading. "Delilah decided to skip college entirely," Zachary continued, his tone still conversational but with an edge that made me increasingly uncomfortable. "She's been pursuing photography as a career for the past few years, which has been an interesting journey to watch from a family perspective." Several guests chuckled politely, and I noticed my mother's expression tightening slightly, though she maintained her social smile. My father's face remained neutral, but his posture had become more rigid as he sensed the direction of Zachary's comments. "I think Delilah's experience really highlights the importance of making practical decisions about education and career development," Zachary said, his voice gaining confidence as he warmed to his theme. "While creative hobbies can certainly be fulfilling, there's something to be said for building genuine professional credentials and contributing to society in meaningful ways." The words hit me like physical blows, each phrase carefully calculated to undermine my credibility and achievements in front of the most influential people in Millbrook Heights. He was using his moment of triumph to publicly diminish my career and personal choices, framing my photography business as a cautionary tale about impractical decisions and failed potential. "I love my sister dearly," he continued with apparent sincerity, "but I sometimes worry about young people who avoid the hard work of real education and instead chase fantasies that don't provide stable foundations for adult responsibility. Delilah's situation has really reinforced my appreciation for the traditional paths that lead to genuine success and security." The room remained politely attentive, but I could feel the shift in energy as guests processed his implications about my life choices. Several people glanced in my direction with expressions ranging from curiosity to pity, clearly wondering about the family dynamics being played out in this public forum. "I hope that someday Delilah will consider pursuing proper education and finding a career that utilizes her potential in more substantial ways," Zachary concluded. "But regardless of the choices she makes, I'm grateful that my parents instilled in me the values that led to tonight's celebration and the opportunities that lie ahead." The applause that followed his speech felt deafening and crushing simultaneously. As guests raised their glasses in toast to Zachary's success and wisdom, I sat frozen in my chair, struggling to process the magnitude of what had just happened. My own brother had used the most important night of his career to publicly humiliate me, dismissing my professional achievements as worthless fantasies and positioning my life choices as cautionary examples of failure and irresponsibility. The moments following Zachary's speech felt suspended in time, as if the entire ballroom had become a frozen tableau of social humiliation. The applause continued around me while I sat motionless, my face burning with shame and my hands trembling slightly as I gripped my wine glass. The carefully rehearsed responses I had prepared for discussing my photography career seemed utterly inadequate in the face of such a calculated public dismissal. As guests began moving around the ballroom again, resuming their conversations and networking, I became acutely aware of the glances being directed my way. Some people looked genuinely sympathetic, clearly uncomfortable with witnessing such a personal family dynamic played out in public. Others seemed curious or even entertained by the drama, whispering among themselves while occasionally casting looks in my direction. Mrs. Pemberton, a longtime family friend who had known me since childhood, approached my table with what appeared to be good intentions. "Delilah, dear," she said in a voice that carried just slightly too far, "your brother certainly has strong opinions about career choices, doesn't he? I'm sure you'll find your way to something more substantial eventually." Her words, though meant kindly, felt like additional salt in an already gaping wound. The assumption that my current work was merely a phase to be outgrown, combined with the public nature of this conversation, made it clear that Zachary's speech had successfully reframed my presence at the party from family member to object of pity and concern. I excused myself from the table, claiming I needed to visit the restroom, and made my way through the ballroom on unsteady legs. The elegant emerald dress that had made me feel confident and appropriately dressed now felt like a costume, as if I were playing dress-up in a world where I clearly didn't belong. The expensive outfit that had represented such a financial sacrifice seemed foolish and wasteful in light of how the evening had unfolded. In the marble-appointed ladies' lounge, I stared at my reflection in the ornate mirror, trying to compose myself and decide how to handle the remainder of the evening. My makeup remained perfect, my hair was still elegantly styled, but my eyes betrayed the devastation I felt inside. I had invested so much hope in this celebration, believing that perhaps my growing professional success might finally earn some recognition or respect from my family. Instead, my own brother had weaponized his moment of triumph to publicly diminish my achievements and reinforce every dismissive attitude my family had always held about my chosen career. The calculated nature of his comments made them even more painful. This wasn't an offhand remark or moment of thoughtlessness, but a deliberate decision to use his platform to humiliate me in front of the most influential people in our community. When I returned to the ballroom, I noticed that my parents were engaged in animated conversation with several other couples, likely basking in the continued praise for Zachary's speech and promotion. Neither of them had approached me to check on my well-being or address their son's public comments about my life choices. Their absence of support felt almost as crushing as Zachary's original remarks. The gift I had so carefully created for my brother remained unopened on the gift table, now feeling like a symbol of my naive hope that artistic gestures might bridge the gap between our different worlds. The hours I had spent crafting a meaningful present that showcased both my professional skills and personal affection seemed wasted and foolish in retrospect. As the evening progressed, I found myself increasingly isolated at my assigned table. The other guests had gradually migrated toward more animated conversations elsewhere in the ballroom, leaving me sitting alone with my thoughts and the echoes of Zachary's devastating speech. Several times, I considered simply leaving the party early, but something kept me rooted in place, perhaps pride, perhaps stubborn determination not to let his words drive me away completely. The breaking point came during the dessert course, when Zachary himself approached my table with what appeared to be genuine concern etched on his face. "Delilah," he said quietly, pulling out the chair beside me, "I hope I didn't upset you with my speech. I was just trying to be honest about the importance of practical career choices." His tone was so sincerely puzzled, as if he genuinely couldn't understand why his public dismissal of my professional life might have been hurtful or inappropriate. The disconnect between his apparent good intentions and the devastating impact of his words highlighted the fundamental gap in understanding that had always existed between us. "Zachary," I said, my voice carefully controlled despite the emotions churning inside me, "you just told 150 influential people that my career is a worthless fantasy and that I'm a cautionary tale about failed potential. how did you think that would make me feel?" He looked genuinely surprised by my reaction, his eyebrows furrowing as if I were being unreasonably sensitive. "I wasn't trying to hurt your feelings," he replied. "I was just being honest about the differences between practical career choices and, well, what you're doing. Surely you can see that there's a difference between real professional success and pursuing hobbies." The casual way he dismissed years of my hard work and growing achievements as mere hobbies crystallized everything that was fundamentally broken in our relationship and my place within the Blackthorn family hierarchy. His inability to even consider that photography might constitute legitimate professional work revealed how deeply entrenched his dismissive attitudes had become. At that moment, sitting in the elegant ballroom surrounded by the celebration of his success, I made a decision that would change the trajectory of my relationship with my family forever. I stood up from the table, my emerald dress rustling softly in the quiet space between us, and looked directly into my brother's confused eyes. "I'm done," I said simply, my voice carrying clearly despite its quiet tone. "I'm done trying to earn respect for my work from people who will never see its value. I'm done attending celebrations where my presence is tolerated but my achievements are dismissed. And I'm done pretending that this family dynamic is healthy or acceptable." Zachary's expression shifted from confusion to alarm as he realized the gravity of what was happening. "Delilah, don't be dramatic," he said, reaching toward my arm. "We're family. We can disagree about career choices without it becoming some big crisis." But I was already stepping away from the table, my decision crystallizing with each word. The expensive dress, the carefully planned gift, the rehearsed conversations about my professional accomplishments, all of it felt like elaborate performance for an audience that would never appreciate the show. I walked across the ballroom toward the exit, my heels clicking against the polished marble floor with a rhythm that felt like a countdown to freedom. Behind me, I could sense rather than see the attention my departure was generating, but for the first time all evening, I didn't care about the social implications or what people might think about my behavior. The morning after Zachary's party, I woke up in my small apartment with a clarity I hadn't experienced in years. The expensive emerald dress hung on my closet door like a reminder of the previous night's humiliation, but instead of feeling devastated, I felt strangely liberated. For the first time in my adult life, I had no obligation to seek my family's approval or validation for my choices. The first few days were admittedly difficult. My phone buzzed constantly with calls from my mother, voicemails from my father, and text messages from Zachary expressing confusion about my overreaction to what he considered honest family feedback. I listened to the messages once, then deleted them without responding. Their continued inability to understand why his public humiliation had been unacceptable confirmed that I had made the right decision in walking away. My photography work became my refuge and salvation during this transitional period. The Faces of Millbrook project provided both emotional healing and professional focus as I threw myself completely into documenting the diverse stories of community members who had built meaningful lives through countless different paths. Interviewing subjects who had overcome adversity, followed unconventional dreams, and found success outside traditional definitions gave me perspective on my own journey. Within a month of cutting ties with my family, my work began attracting attention from unexpected sources. Dr. Jennifer Hawthorne, the psychology professor who had first recommended my services to university colleagues, introduced me to Rebecca Martinez, a freelance journalist who wrote for several regional magazines. Rebecca was working on a feature story about emerging artists in smaller cities and wanted to profile my photography business and the upcoming Cultural Arts Foundation exhibition. The resulting article, published in Tri-State Arts Quarterly, featured a full-page spread of my portraits along with an interview discussing my artistic philosophy and business development. The piece positioned me as an innovative photographer who was building bridges between traditional portraiture and contemporary documentary work. Most importantly, it established my credibility within the broader regional arts community, attracting inquiries from galleries and clients far beyond Millbrook Heights. The exhibition opening at the Cultural Arts Foundation exceeded every expectation I had dared to harbor. Over 300 people attended the reception, including art critics, gallery directors, and collectors from neighboring cities who had traveled specifically to see the Faces of Millbrook portraits. The response was overwhelmingly positive, with several pieces selling on opening night and multiple commissions booked for the following months. Standing in the gallery surrounded by my work, watching strangers study my photographs with genuine appreciation and interest, I realized that I had found my true professional community. These were people who understood the value of visual storytelling, who appreciated technical skill and artistic vision, and who measured success by creative impact rather than traditional career metrics. The exhibition's success led to opportunities one could never have imagined while working at Riverside Cafe and seeking my family's approval. The Regional Arts Council invited me to apply for a prestigious emerging artist grant that would fund a year-long project documenting rural communities throughout our state. A gallery in the state capital offered me representation, promising to include my work in group exhibitions and solo shows over the next 2 years. Most significantly, I received an invitation to participate in a collaborative project with the State Tourism Board, creating a photography campaign that would promote cultural attractions and artistic communities throughout the region. The project came with substantial compensation, professional recognition, and the opportunity to travel extensively while documenting subjects and locations that aligned perfectly with my artistic interests. As my professional reputation grew, I began receiving inquiries from clients who specifically sought my services because of my artistic approach and portfolio strength. Corporate executives wanted executive portraits that captured personality alongside professionalism. Nonprofit organizations hired me to document their community impact through compelling visual narratives. Local businesses requested photography that told their brand stories with authenticity and creativity. The financial transformation was as dramatic as the professional recognition. Within 6 months of my family break, I was earning more than I had ever imagined possible through my photography work. I moved from my cramped studio apartment to a spacious loft in the downtown Arts District, with dedicated studio space, natural light flooding through large windows, and room to display my work properly. I hired Emma Sullivan, a recent art school graduate, as my full-time assistant to handle scheduling, client communications, and basic editing tasks. Having help with administrative responsibilities allowed me to focus entirely on creative work and business development. Emma brought fresh perspectives and technical skills that enhanced my productivity while providing her with valuable professional experience in photography business management. The most unexpected development was the emergence of a chosen family among my professional community. Rebecca Martinez became a close friend who understood the challenges of building creative careers outside traditional expectations. Dr. Hawthorne continued providing mentorship and introduced me to other faculty members who became both clients and genuine supporters of my work. Emma's enthusiasm and dedication reminded me of my own early passion for photography, and mentoring her professional development became deeply rewarding. We developed a working relationship built on mutual respect and shared commitment to creating meaningful visual art. Having someone who genuinely appreciated my skills and vision provided emotional support that I hadn't realized I was missing. 6 months after walking out of Zachary's celebration, I attended a gallery opening where I encountered Mrs. Pemberton, the family friend who had offered her condescending comfort at the party. She approached me with obvious surprise, having clearly followed news about my growing success through mutual acquaintances in Millbrook Heights. "Delilah," she exclaimed, genuinely impressed. "I've been hearing such wonderful things about your photography career. The exhibition at the Cultural Arts Foundation was apparently quite successful, and someone mentioned you're working with the State Tourism Board now." Her tone had completely changed from pity to respect, illustrating how external validation had shifted perceptions of my professional legitimacy. The irony wasn't lost on me that the same people who had dismissed my work as hobby pursuit now spoke about it with admiration because others outside their social circle had recognized its value. The conversation confirmed that my decision to stop seeking family approval had been absolutely correct. Professional success and personal fulfillment had flourished once I stopped trying to translate my achievements into terms that would satisfy people who fundamentally misunderstood creative careers. 1 year after walking out of Zachary's promotion party, I received an unexpected phone call that would test everything I had learned about boundaries, self-worth, and the complex dynamics of family relationships. My mother's voice on the other end of the line carried a tone I had never heard before, uncertain, almost humble, completely stripped of the confident authority that had always characterized our interactions. "Delilah," she began hesitantly, "I hope I'm not overstepping by calling you directly. I know you've requested space from the family, and we've tried to respect that, but something has happened that I think you should know about." My immediate instinct was to end the call and maintain the protective distance I had carefully constructed over the past 12 months. But something in her voice, a vulnerability that seemed genuine rather than manipulative, made me pause and listen to what she had to say. She explained that Zachary had been experiencing what she delicately termed professional difficulties at Hartwell Associates. Despite his rapid promotion to senior vice president, his relationships with colleagues had deteriorated significantly over the past several months. Several major clients had specifically requested different account managers after working with him, citing concerns about his communication style and collaborative abilities. More troubling, according to my mother, was that Zachary had developed what appeared to be significant anxiety about his performance and job security. The confidence that had always defined his personality had given way to self-doubt and increasingly erratic behavior both at work and in his personal relationships. He had apparently sought therapy but was struggling to understand why his professional success wasn't translating into the satisfaction and respect he had expected. "He's been asking about you," my mother continued carefully. "Not in a demanding way, but with what seems like genuine regret about how things ended between you. I think he's beginning to understand that success isn't as straightforward as we always believed it to be." The conversation revealed that my parents had also been following my professional progress through mutual acquaintances and local media coverage. They had learned about the Cultural Arts Foundation exhibition, my work with the State Tourism Board, and my growing reputation within the regional arts community. My mother admitted that they had been surprised and impressed by the level of recognition I had achieved. "We may have been too narrow in our understanding of what constitutes meaningful work," she said, her academic training evident even in this moment of personal vulnerability. "Your success has forced us to reconsider some assumptions we made about creative careers and professional legitimacy." Despite the apparent sincerity of her words, I remained cautious about reopening communication with family members who had caused such deep hurt. The emotional healing I had experienced over the past year felt precious and fragile, and I wasn't willing to risk that progress for vague promises of changed attitudes. However, I agreed to meet my mother for coffee at a neutral location, a small cafe in the university district where we could have a private conversation without the charged atmosphere of family spaces or social settings. The meeting took place 3 weeks after her initial phone call, giving me time to process my feelings and establish clear boundaries for any potential reconciliation. When I arrived at the cafe, I barely recognized the woman sitting at the corner table. My mother, who had always projected unshakable confidence and authority, appeared smaller somehow, less certain of herself and her place in the world. She had clearly made an effort with her appearance, but there was something hesitant in her demeanor that suggested genuine nervousness about our interaction. Our conversation began awkwardly, with careful small talk about neutral topics like the weather and local news. Gradually, however, my mother began sharing more substantive reflections about the past year and the family's growing awareness of how their attitudes had affected our relationships. "I've been thinking a great deal about the night of Zachary's party," she said, stirring her coffee absently while avoiding direct eye contact. "I realize now that we all failed you that evening, not just Zachary with his speech, but your father and I with our silence. We should have immediately addressed his inappropriate comments instead of allowing them to stand unchallenged." She went on to explain that they had begun recognizing patterns in their family dynamics that extended far beyond career expectations. Their definition of success had been so rigid that it prevented them from appreciating different forms of achievement and personal fulfillment. More importantly, they had confused love with approval, assuming that pushing me toward their preferred path was an expression of caring rather than a form of control. "We've learned about your professional recognition through various sources," she continued, "and we're genuinely proud of what you've accomplished. But more than that, we've come to understand that our approval was never necessary for your success. You've built something meaningful entirely through your own efforts and vision." The acknowledgement felt both validating and insufficient. While I appreciated her recognition of my achievements, the deeper issue was whether they could truly accept me as an equal adult whose choices deserved respect rather than judgment. Their pride in my success was welcome, but I needed assurance that their acceptance wasn't conditional on continued professional recognition. I explained to my mother that any renewed relationship would need to be built on fundamentally different terms. I would not tolerate dismissive comments about my career, unsolicited advice about my life choices, or attempts to pressure me into conforming to their expectations. Most importantly, they would need to accept that I had built a fulfilling life outside their approval and had no intention of seeking their validation for future decisions. "I understand," she replied with what appeared to be genuine sincerity. We've had to learn that loving someone means respecting their autonomy and choices, even when those choices are different from what we might prefer. Over the following months, we engaged in careful, gradual contact that allowed us to rebuild trust while maintaining healthy boundaries. My parents made genuine efforts to understand my work and express interest in my projects without offering unsolicited guidance or criticism. When they attended my second solo exhibition 6 months later, they came as supportive family members rather than judges evaluating my life choices. Zachary's situation required more complex navigation. His professional struggles had apparently given him perspective on the relationship between success and personal fulfillment that he had previously lacked. Through intermediary conversations with my mother, he expressed genuine remorse about his behavior at the promotion party and desire to repair our relationship. Eventually, I agreed to meet with him for a brief coffee meeting, primarily to establish whether he had truly understood the impact of his actions. The conversation was uncomfortable but ultimately productive. He acknowledged that his public comments had been inappropriate and hurtful, driven by his own insecurities about defining success rather than any legitimate concerns about my choices. "I think I was threatened by your courage to follow your own path," he admitted. It highlighted my own fears about whether I was truly happy with the choices I had made, even though they looked successful from the outside. Our relationship would never return to the closeness of our childhood, but we established a foundation of mutual respect that allowed for occasional contact and civil family interactions. More importantly, his experience had taught him valuable lessons about the difference between external achievement and internal fulfillment that would serve him well in addressing his own professional and personal challenges. Looking back on that transformative year, I realized that walking away from my family's celebration had been the catalyst for discovering my true worth and building authentic success on my own terms. The pain of that public humiliation had forced me to stop seeking validation from people who couldn't understand my path and start building relationships with those who celebrated rather than merely tolerated my choices. The lesson I want to share with anyone watching this is that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is create distance from people who consistently undermine your worth, even when those people are family. Your value isn't determined by others' ability to recognize it, and your success doesn't require anyone else's approval to be real and meaningful. If this story resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need to hear that their unconventional path is valid and valuable. Hit subscribe if you want to hear more stories about finding your authentic self despite others' expectations. And remember, the most important validation is the kind you give yourself when you have the courage to pursue your own vision of success. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.